Welcome to Iona Speaks About Soaring Courageously, where I take you through an inspiring journey of courage and resilience through empowering conversations with amazing guests. In this podcast, I share my personal story of overcoming adversity and embracing the beautiful masterpiece of creation. Through a series of personal anecdotes, insightful reflections, and awe-inspiring conversations, there is an emphasis on the significance of self-belief with the willingness to step outside of our comfort zones. As someone who has faced numerous challenges, I know firsthand the importance of rising above fears and limitations, where I became a #1 best-selling author. My story underscores that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the determination to move forward despite of it. So join me for conversations that are riveting, aiming to inspire you to spread your wings and soar towards your dreams with unwavering conviction. Welcome to another episode of Iona Speaks About Soaring Courageously. I am your host and co-producer of this podcast, and I am a transformer of burnout into power. So I am so thrilled to be with you again this week. And one of the scriptures that I wanted to bring out for this week was Psalm 32:8. And it basically says, I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. I will counsel you who are willing to learn with my eye upon you. And so for today's guest, I am so excited because we are in a space where the creator of this universe, our God, Elohim, actually speaks to us and instructs us on the path that we should go, because his eye, her eye, is right upon us, looking at us. So I am thrilled to have Dominice with me. Welcome, Dominice.
Iona, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to chatting with you, reconnecting with you today.
Absolutely. And it is a reconnection, as we have had a couple of conversations already.
Yep. You've been on mine, I've been on yours. I'm
right.
back.
This is great. I know. So for those who might be just hearing Dominice this first time, Dominice Clifton, affectionately known as Dom, entered entrepreneurship as the founder of Move and Still Nourish Wellness Collective after embarking on her own personal healing journey. Suppressing unresolved childhood trauma had her walking in a fog for over 25 years. And then in 2020, she was awakened through a 90-day meditation regimen that God took her through, where she focused on her mind, her body, and her spirit. And this experience changed her life, brought her healing, and led her into a space of impactful and empowering entrepreneurship, where she could empower other individuals and organizations to prioritize soul care while living more aligned with their fulfilling lives. So as a nutrition and wellness coach, her journey brings a catalytic change to others, with her work lying at the intersection of connection, community, and change through integrated healing approaches that she's definitely going to be sharing with us today. And she is also a podcast host of the School of Healing, and she has a book that you can purchase, Whole Space and Heal. So, Dom, welcome again, and let's dive right in.
Let's dive in. Let's do it.
So I am so thankful to have you as a guest again. And as this is a new rebranding of the podcast, so you were on the previous one, Iona Speaks About Defending Self-Justice, and we talked about how you embraced who you are, your authentic self, and how you were able to take that executive ownership of who you were, who God created you to be, and actually defend that space and stand in that space in affirmative. And so now, as you are soaring beyond expectations and continuing to rise into deeper heights, tell me a little bit about what got you into that space.
Into the space where I am currently?
into the space where you are currently, where you are soaring courageously.
Okay. Currently, I am supporting women as a clarity coach and a business strategist. And I always differentiate the two because I feel that it's extremely important for us to have clarity before we can think about business strategy. From my own experiences and then what I see with other people, we oftentimes go straight to the what do I need to do, but we don't focus as much on the clarity and who I need to be, right? And so
Yes.
I really, again, just from my own lived experience, having lots of conversations with women, it was important for me to pick out this clarity piece first. And once you understand who you are, right, as a person and as an entrepreneur, then we can talk about your ideal client, right? Then we can talk about how you serve them. And I share that I feel really passionate about the work that I do. I actually had an exit interview with the client earlier today, and it was a really beautiful conversation and just like a moment for me to pause in what I have been able to do with leading these women in this group program, because sometimes we question ourselves and we doubt ourselves and we don't know if we're making the impact that we desire to make, and being able to have someone to hold up a mirror and talk about how life-changing this program has been for them and their business was amazing. And so the work that I'm doing today, I really feel like I'm a business doula. I hold it sacred. It's a birthing process, right? Women come to me and they have a vision that spirit has placed on their hearts, that spirit has entrusted to them. And they're trying to figure out, how do I bring this vision to life? Or maybe they're already in business, or they already have their, nonprofit organization, but it's not moving and growing in the way that they desire. And so still we're trying to figure out how to take that vision and to really get them to the place where they can have the impact that they desire to make. And I share all that to say that I've gotten to the place that I am as a business coach. I've gotten to the place that I am as a somatic practitioner through my own lived experiences. I never saw myself in the wellness space. I entered the wellness space after going through my own healing journey. And then coming out of that, you talked about the fog that I felt like I existed in for most of my life. I experienced transformation for myself first, and then I wanted to share that with the world. And so that really is where, the courage comes from. And it hasn't been easy. I was sharing, what's today, Thursday, 2 days ago, I led a stress workshop, and I was talking about EFT tapping, emotional freedom technique, as a mechanism for healing. And I was sharing how, when I started in entrepreneurship 5 or 6 years ago, I was so afraid to be seen. I was so afraid to be seen and heard by the world. I was coming out of a place where I had been hiding my entire life, right? I didn't have the confidence that I have now. I didn't have the, the worthiness, the self-esteem that I have now. And just to see that I have been able to go through all of these, my own individual journey, my own transformation, and then to share that with the world. And so I'll wrap up by saying I'm so passionate about the work that I do because I've seen how it's changed my life. And I'm grateful to be in a space where Spirit has allowed me to release a lot of the things that I was holding, trauma, stories, fears, and to be in a place now where I am courageous enough to step out and to take up space and to allow myself to be seen and heard in the world.
That is absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
And I am so glad that you shared that. And I just want to hold space for that because that is amazing. Sometimes it's challenging to take those brave steps, because we're not always able to do that. There's fear, there's inhibitions, there may be some shame of why did it take so long, some guilt, all of that self-doubt, all of that can be a part of it. Yet now, when we're moving into a new space, you step in with bravery and you move forth with courage. And you know what? Even when you move forth with courage, it doesn't mean that you're still not have inhibitions or that you're still not afraid. It's just the fact that the mindset has changed. And that's the beauty of it. And that's why I'm like, that is so amazing. And I just want to applaud that because that is so great. So I love the fact that you are a business doula, that you identify yourself as a business doula. And midwifery, like being able to birth something into a process, being that sister, that angel of light in that very sacred space of helping another person birth what is within them to get them to another place. So not only are you soaring courageously, but you are helping others to soar courageously.
Thank you for that. Yes. And I think that I appreciate you for making that connection, because oftentimes we don't realize that the journey isn't just about us, right? When we say yes to the calling that's on our hearts, right? When we say yes to that dream that we can't seem to put away, even when we want to push it away, it's not only about us and our transformation. There are other lives, right, that are going to be transformed as a result of your obedience. And sometimes it is scary, right, to step into the calling. Sometimes it is scary to say yes. But I always even tell my students, right now, someone is praying for the solution that you are creating to offer. And so I love that you distinguish that, because it's true, right? Like, our liberation, our souls are all connected. And so when we are liberated, we are also liberating others in the process. And even if we aren't working with someone directly, people can be on the sidelines watching and seeing our lives and being inspired by what we're doing. And they may say something, they may not say anything. You never know who you are impacting by being obedient and moving along the journey in the way that you're being called to move. So I love that you said that.
I love that too. And I love now of how you also spoke about that scariness, that leap, because that's really like a leap of faith. Because it is scary. But here's the whole thing too. We are connecting where we are aligning with one group into another group. And we're going from one space into another space. And actually, I was just having this conversation with someone recently, a friend, about how everything in our past, all of our experiences, have led us to the present, which lead us to tomorrow. And so tomorrow is also going to have all of our past that is leading us to that present, which is going to lead us to the next tomorrow. So why don't we just do our best to focus on the present and really hold space and time in the present? And that's been challenging to do. I know that's been challenging for me to do. So I'm not going to sit up here and say that this is something that is easy to do. Yet I think it's so rewarding when we get to that space. And if we just do that practice just a little bit at a time of focusing on the present and the now, then when things happen and come in, then it's like, oh, okay, I was prepared for this. I was prepared for this. And I'm allowing myself to be awakened to move forward in this.
Yes. And like you said, the present moment is not easy, right? We're either typically dwelling in the past and thinking about things that we wish we could have done differently, or, life circumstances that we wish could have been differently, or we are already trying to be in the future and control the outcome of what has not happened yet. And so the process of being in the present requires trust, right? It requires a level of self-trust. And it requires a level of trust in the universe. When we are thinking about tomorrow, the next day, the next week, the next month, it's us trying to be in control, right? I want to dictate how this turns out. And so I need to be a part of this process, and I need to hold on to everything because this is the outcome that I desire. And it really requires trust to let go, right? And just be present and trust that whatever happens and however this unfolds, it's for my highest good. And I'm like you, I ain't gonna sit up here and say that it's always easy. It's something that I have to constantly come back and remind myself of as someone who likes to feel in control. And as humans, most of us do, right? Like, that's just our nature. But that trust relationship, right? It is one that you build with yourself, right? And it's one that you build with spirit. And when I say build that relationship with yourself, a lot of times when I used to be thinking about the future and trying to control the future, I wasn't thinking that I had it, right? And I have to remind myself in the present moment that when there have been times in the past where things may have been hard, or, you were wondering about the outcome, you've always figured it out. And so there's a level of trust now, right, that when I think about that and I look at the receipts, I'm able to trust myself more in this present moment and not be so worried about what's going to happen, because I know that I've always figured it out in the past, and not on my own, right? I've had the support of spirit and, angels, ancestors, and guides, but it's always been figured out.
I love that too, because, when we talk about trust, that allows us to soar courageously. That allows us to step into these new spaces of bravery, because we can trust the fact that now we can trust ourselves and we can trust God. There was a time when I was trusting God, but I wasn't trusting myself, which meant I wasn't really trusting God because I wasn't trusting who He created me to be and how she wanted me to show up. So therefore, I had to get to that place where I I was able to trust the divinity that was moving through me, and trusting that as I showed up in spaces, that I could move with insight, that I could move with clarity, that I could move with wisdom, that I could move in understanding. And then as I do that, then I can grow. And as I grow, then I can glean from those experiences that came before me, and I can glean from the experiences that my ancestors had, and then I can release that and deposit that into another space for someone else.
You just said something that I have to like rewind and go back to, because that just like was like, wow, that was a really powerful statement. You said when we don't trust ourselves, or, you know, you're talking about yourself. When I don't trust myself, it means that I don't trust, right, what God has already placed inside of me, right? In so many words, that's what you were saying.
Yes.
And that is such a powerful statement. And I've never thought about it that way, but that is literally what is happening, right? We're being called to do something, to move a certain way, to birth the dream, you know, to walk in a certain direction. We are afraid, like you said, sometimes we don't trust ourselves.
Yeah.
And if we are being guided to it, right, that means that it's possible for us. And like you said, we already have the tools and resources. We are already equipped with what we need to at least start the journey. And like you said, we learn along the way. And so, wow, that was beautiful.
Wow. And that just came. I mean, I had to come to that understanding, because we might have talked about it in a previous conversation. But, you know, when God downloaded your 90-day journey to you, so that could open up your mind, your body, and your spirit to a new place of understanding for what you needed to do. Yeah. That's what I think what happens to us all the time, is that God gives us those downloads so that we can have that understanding. And so dwelling in the presence of God has become a necessity for me. And that is what allowed me to get to the place of understanding that, you know what, how can I trust myself? First I have to trust God, but how can I really trust myself if I don't trust God? And then how can I trust God if I don't really trust myself? So they almost coexist with one another, starting with God, and then getting us to the realization that God created us in His image and in His likeness. So for us to flow in that, if that really is true and we believe it, then that means we are walking in His image and in His likeness, that we are a reflection of Him, which means what we do when we trust Him, we trust ourselves. So they must interconnect. And when we trust ourselves, that means we're trusting Him in us.
Yes, I love that.
And so I just want to go back to when you were saying in the very beginning about how you did an exit interview with someone who you had worked with, someone who you had partnered with, someone who was with you. And so as you were soaring courageously, you're helping that individual soar courageously. When you do an exit interview, because even though it's an exit from that space, doesn't mean that it's an exit from presence. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I have been running just finished up with a 12-week group coaching program for my students, and these are all women entrepreneurs. There were a couple of women nonprofit founders in the space as well. A lot of the information that you learn as an entrepreneur overlaps with nonprofit. Nonprofit is business. We just, bring the money in different ways. And this is a woman that I've known for a couple of years. She's also in the wellness space, and I've, been on the sidelines seeing the work that she's been doing. We've had conversations about her goals, her desires, and then some of the spaces and places where she's felt stuck in her business, right? And again, the reason why I have decided to focus so much on the clarity piece of things is because every time I have conversations with women entrepreneurs, I have learned, right, if we don't have clarity, all the other pieces become extremely hard, right? Yeah. Clarity, it makes a difference in how we show up. It makes a difference in the way that our methods, our approach. And so I was having this conversation. I was asking her about her experiences, and I was asking her about her past experiences and how this experience was different. And it was really beautiful to just hear her reflection, right? She talked about, I've done a lot of, programs and online, on-demand things in the past. And she's like, what makes this different is that It wasn't a one size fits all approach. And I think that was my intention when creating this, because we're all different, right? You and I have different assignments. We have different missions, right? And although some of the business strategy are the same, how we get to our destination is going to look different from person to person. And going back to Spirit has implanted things in us that are our secret sauce and our unique gifts. And your business should reflect that. And so when I say this is a birthing process, it's birthing all of your gifts and your skills that maybe you haven't even tapped into. We're looking at all of those things, right? What are the best parts of myself that I get to bring into this business? A lot of times we leave things on the table, right? This same student, I remember at the beginning, we were talking about her current business, which is more wellness focused, but she had done leadership work in the past and executive coaching. And it's like she pushed that away, thinking that she had to kind of box herself into one space. And I'm like, you get to bring all the amazing parts of yourself into this process, right? And so over this 12 weeks, she's gotten the clarity that she has needed to figure out how to integrate the best parts of herself into her business. And so again, just hearing her share her experience and how this experience was different from, the experiences that she has had in the past, it touched my heart in a way that's hard to convey. Because I remember when I was first, right, I'm going to take you back about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, when I was first getting the download and the guidance to step back into coaching. Right. I didn't want to say yes, right? I'm talking about being obedient. I didn't want to be obedient. It was giving, you can find somebody else because we've already tried this and I didn't like it. It didn't work, right? I entered into entrepreneurship 5 years ago as a wellness coach, and it was okay. It was what I needed in that season, those experiences and those lessons for where I was. But I always knew that it wasn't quite right. It wasn't quite the fit. It never really felt like the fit. It didn't feel as fulfilling as I desired for it to fulfill. I wasn't having the impact I desired. And it was hard, if I'm being honest. It was hard. And so I stepped away from coaching, wellness coaching, after about 2 years. I started moving still. And that was my lane. And I was good there. And I was seeing success in that area. And I started getting a download again to step back into coaching, and not just step back into coaching, business coaching. And I was just like, absolutely not, right? Like, I don't feel like I'm ready to teach or guide anyone else because I'm still out here figuring it out myself. But what I've learned is that even if we are just 2 steps ahead of someone else, that those 2 steps are enough to get them going, right? Those 2 steps are enough to move them further along. And I share that because a lot of times we do question ourselves, and we are being called to do something. It's like, I'm not ready for that, or I'm not prepared for that, or I'm not good enough for that, or I don't know enough for that, right? All the excuses that we tell ourselves. And I have learned, like, yes, these women are also doing this work, but you are far enough along where you can still be helpful for them. And you've learned so much that you can impart some of that wisdom on them. And so to be obedient to something that I was afraid to say yes to in the beginning because I didn't feel like I was ready. I didn't feel like I had mastered it yet, right? That was my hesitation of like, well, I'm still figuring it out, right? How am I going to be a teacher? And then to fast forward to a year and a half later and to hear how, because of my obedience, this woman is like, she used an analogy of saying, I said, how do you feel now that we're closing out the program? She said, I feel like I'm on the highway and I'm ready to go. And she said, before this program, I felt like I was driving on the back roads confused, right? And now I feel like I can accelerate and go. And so to hear that this person is now able to step confidently into their calling because of the work that we've done together, it's a feeling that is hard to explain. And so that is all that came out of that exit interview today. Yeah.
And that is great because that is a relationship that has now been cultivated.
Yes.
And she is going to remember all of the pieces that you have shared to her, all of the downloads that were given to you that you shared with her. And all of those things are going to be there. So, like, I loved how you said, we might not be ready. We might not think that we have all the information and all of the experience that we need, or maybe we don't have all the letters behind our names. And there's a lot of people who have a whole bunch of letters behind their names, yet their assignments are still not ours. And we still have to step out in what our assignment is, because our assignment is what's going to break barriers for somebody else's assignment.
Yeah.
So the fact that you said the analogy, I love the analogy that she used as far as, she was driving on the back roads confused, but now she's been enlightened and awakened, and she's on the highway and ready to take off and go down.
Yeah. And I, from what you shared, just want to say that sometimes, most of the time, a lot of the times, the vision and the plan that we have is going to look different from what spirit gives us, right? Again, I'm reiterating this. I wasn't planning on stepping back into coaching at all, but I definitely wasn't planning on stepping back into coaching as a business coach because I didn't feel like I'd figured it out enough. And so a part of the courage, being courageous and brave, is trusting what has been placed on your heart. There's a sticky note on my wall that says, if it wasn't possible for you, it wouldn't even be a possibility. Like if it wasn't possible, you wouldn't even be able to perceive it as a possibility. So if you couldn't do it, the dream would have been given to someone else. So the fact that you have the dream, the fact that you have that vision, the fact that you've been given and entrusted with this assignment means that you can do it. And it might look different from what you thought the journey was going to look like, but you have to trust, right? And you have to be courageous enough to know that the universe is going to catch you, that God is going to have your back on the journey. And that has been a part of the evolution and the transformation for me, is getting to a place where I'm stepping onto a ledge, and I don't know what's going to happen when I take this next step, but then being caught, right? And being like, oh, okay, I can do this. And yes, I've been able to see the evolution of my students, my clients over these last couple of weeks, but I've also changed so much and transformed so much, right? I've also conquered a fear, right? Group coaching, stepping into group coaching, like, ooh, I don't want them to ask me things and I don't have the answers, and I don't want them to think I'm not the expert. But a part of me saying yes and just being courageous, I've evolved so much myself over these last couple of weeks too. And so that's another lesson in being courageous and being brave, is that you never know what's on the other side of your yes.
You don't. We don't. It's transformative. And because it's transformative, it's not transformative just for them. It is transformative for us, because we are always evolving. And I love how you said how the vision that we have for ourselves is not the vision that Spirit gives to us. So you call it Spirit, some people call it intuition, I call it Holy Spirit. It's all the fact that it is divinity that is speaking through us, that is sharing with us in that presence, letting us know, oh, okay, you know what? I gave you a glimpse, this is it, and then now I'm going to spread your wings, and I'm going to let you soar even higher, because I'm going to give you even more. However, I'm going to even shake this up. I'm not going to give you everything, because there's so much more that I want you to have. And if I give you too much, you still might be like, I'm still not ready for this. I might not want to do this, because I know I've had those things in myself. I mean, even stepping out with this, we are looking at each other, and not only are we looking at each other as we did before, but it was just audio. Now this is clear, visible. Everyone's going to see us. My beautiful teapots behind me that's been collecting, they're going to see your beautiful face and everything. And here's the great thing about it. Not only can they hear us, but now they can see our expression. And that's what I have been told now has been a barrier breaking enforcement for a life, because not only can they hear what we're saying, but they can see what we're saying and how we're moving. And there is a scripture in the Bible that says, I want to see what you're saying. John was talking to God, and God said, I want you to turn and see what I am saying. Because sometimes we're just listening, but sometimes we have to see what God is saying. And so that vision becomes enlarged. And there was another piece that you brought out too, about how when we step out and Holy Spirit gives us something that was not what we thought it was going to be. Because, as I introduced myself in the beginning, I said who I am. I am a life and health coach. But yet I'm also a transformer of burnout into power, because that's what I've been doing. I have transformed burnout into power. So I am transforming burnout into power for others. And that also allowed me to see a different definition where burnout, yes, it's exhaustion. Yes, burnout can be tiredness. Yes, burnout can be in the workplace. But there's also burnout in life. There's burnout in every dimension of our multi-dimensional health, in all of those spaces. And when we are misaligned with our purpose, we might know what our purpose is, but when we're misaligned with the flow of how our purpose needs to be presented, that opens the door for us to be imbalanced with our multidimensional health, which brings in that burnout. And so that's why we're transforming our mindsets. And as we are evolving others, we are ourselves being evolved. Which is such a beautiful and a powerful thing. And this is why I love having conversations with you, Dom, because there's all these things that just come out in the midst of the conversation that allows us to step into that new space of bravery.
You know, as someone who spends a lot of my professional time educating people on stress and stress management and burnout and trauma, I talk a lot about burnout from the more wellness lens, right? But you are so right. Burnout can come from misalignment. Burnout can come from not being aligned to the path that spirit is asking you or calling you to be on. And it becomes your life. Your life literally becomes energy draining, right? The people around you, right? Who maybe you're being called to vibrate at a higher level, and that's going to require you to let some folks go, but we want to hang on to them. And so we're giving our energy to people and places and spaces that no longer serves us. And that can cause burnout. And when I started wellness coaching back 5 years ago, I was always burned out. Always burned out. And what I know now that I didn't know then was that it was almost as if I was on the path, but I needed to pivot and shift a little bit. That misalignment, right, was causing me to constantly burn out, because the work that I do now, right, it's a lot. It requires a lot of me, but I never feel burned out. I have days where I feel tired, right? But I never feel burned out. And I'm managing 2 businesses, right? Small children, 5 and 8. And so I love that you made that distinction, because again, we typically think about it from like a stress perspective, but it can also be spiritual, right? It's not just mental burnout, it can be spiritual. And for anyone who's listening to this, sometimes we don't even know what misalignment looks like, right? We're so used to living that life that we don't even know what it looks like. If you are feeling unhappy, if you're feeling unfulfilled, if you're feeling like there's this void, like there's something missing, right? You can't maybe name it or put your finger on it, but it feels like there's something else, there's more. Those are all signs of misalignment. If you lack clarity and you're constantly looking externally for the answers, and you got to ask your mom and your partner and your friends about what direction you need to take in your life, right? Like those are all signs of misalignment. Another one, imposter syndrome. That's a big one, right? Oftentimes, especially today, it's a buzzword, imposter syndrome, and people are giving you strategies for imposter syndrome. I always say sometimes you are an imposter, because sometimes you're in a space that you are not intended to be in. And maybe in one point in your life, it served you, right? That relationship served you, or that job served you, or that business served you. But now it doesn't. And you're being called to evolve and to let go and to transform, but you're holding on to because you're afraid, which is the natural part of the human experience. But at some point, you start to be an imposter, because you are literally living in a life, right? That's not the life that you are intended to live. And so if you can relate to any of those things, right? Like going through life and everything feeling hard, right? You're like, I'm working so hard on this business and I just can't get it going. All of those things are signs of misalignment. And what we often do is try to push and force and make it work and hang on. And the courageous thing to do, right? The brave thing to do is to trust that if I let go, if I step away, what is on the other side of my yes and my obedience, right? Because I've been courageous enough to step into that unknown space. It's going to be greater than what is in my past and what I'm holding on to currently. And so I felt like it was important for us to talk about that, because it does cause burnout, right? When you are holding on to a life that is no longer serving you.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you did that and spoke to our audience so directly, for lack of a better word, because it's intentional. Because misalignment is the key. That is the key piece. You've shared your pieces, even already, and talked about how your misalignment with how you were to, your misalignment with your purpose was causing you to feel drained. And so when you were able to get aligned, then now, even though you have 2 businesses that you're doing, you're not feeling drained. You're actually walking in freedom, and you're walking in liberty. And I know that Holy Spirit gave me what that definition was for burnout, because I used to think of burnout as being negative. I used to think of burnout as being shameful. But I don't even think of burnout as being shameful anymore. I think of burnout as being powerful, because when you are misaligned, it awakens you to become aligned. with what we were supposed to be doing. And so over 35 years, I was in a space of child sexual exploitation, and I loved that space. And yes, that had an alignment with my purpose for that timing. But then when the shift happened and I tried to hold on, and Dom, I did. I held on and I tried to hold on tightly, and that was causing me to become weary and causing me to become frustrated, and that was my misalignment with my purpose. I was not aligned with the call that God had given to me. And when Holy Spirit said, no, you have to shift, I'm bringing you into this place of wellness, this place of holism, this place of health, that's where you step into. And the way that I stepped into it, now that I'm about to finish up my course in IIN, which is the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, I have loved everything that I have learned. And everything that I have learned has been an alignment to every experience that I have had in my past. When we talked about earlier about how everything that we've done and experienced in our past has been a preparation for today, that is what I have learned. And it has been so fulfilling for me. And so now, when I'm in this new space, do I still get tired? Of course you still get tired. But the tiredness is not a drain. I am not drained. And that's the piece that has now been corrected. So, I didn't know that we were going to go on the misalignment for as long as we did, but yet I believe that it was necessary because it is going to awaken someone who is listening, someone who is watching, and it is going to allow them to take a step forward that they were holding on to, that they did not think that they could take a step forward. Yes, you can take that step forward because you are seeing two women who have bravely and courageously taken a step forward and are still taking a step forward.
I love that. And sometimes it's just a step, right? You don't have to have the entire path figured out. One of my favorite questions or prayers to ask Spirit is, what's my next best step? Just the next best step, right? I don't need you to give me the whole route, because if you show me everything, it's going to be overwhelming and I'm not going to want to do it, right? So I think that's why God doesn't give us the whole plan, because if he gave you the whole plan, you'd be overwhelmed by the plan, right? But you can ask, what is the next best step? When you get that step, then you ask for the next best step. And you can slow walk this process, right? And so it's important to know that we don't have to, if you're listening to this and maybe you're like, oh, I am feeling misaligned, or I'm recognizing that I'm misaligned, and maybe it is the career, that it's time to do something different, or the relationship. It's not saying you got to uproot your whole life and abandon everything today, right? It's not saying that you have to jump ship today, and I would not recommend you do that. But you can say, what's the next best step? And maybe the next best step is something small, right? But that leads you to the next step. And that in itself is also courageous, right? Being willing to take that first step and then being willing to take that next step. That's courage as well. So it doesn't have to be the big leaps all the time.
Right. And I'm so glad that you even said that too. And so at this moment in time, which I've not done on any of the other 3 previous recordings that we have done, but I just feel led right now that if we just pause and then we just allow ourselves to take a breath, and we are giving every listener and every watcher that permission to take a breath. Because as we breathe, we allow Holy Spirit to breathe through us. As we breathe, we allow every neuron that is functioning within our body, and there are thousands of them, to be called into a space to recognize the greatness and the holiness and the sacredness of this time and this moment. When we breathe, we allow ourselves to recognize that which has been misaligned can be realigned. When we breathe, we allow ourselves to get into a space to settle in, to set back, to refocus, to recalibrate, to rejuvenate, to become refreshed. Breath brings us into a space of wholeness. Breath brings us into a space that is life-giving. Breath brings us into a space that is nurturing. And breath brings us into a space that is nourishing, so that we're able to hear what we might not have been able to hear before because our ears were dulled with the busyness. We're able to see what maybe we wouldn't be able to see before because our eyes had scales on them. And we allowed ourselves to breathe so that the scales can come off a little bit. So we just need to pause. Sometimes we just need that time to pause. And like I said, that was something that, hadn't done before and was definitely not expecting to do. But yet I just felt how the conversation was being guided, that's what was needed at this moment.
And can I just say, my business is called Move and Still, because sometimes we need to move, but sometimes we need to be still. And both of those work together in symphony, right? Yeah. We need both. There are moments where we need both. And I love that you said that, because sometimes the next best step can be stillness, right? Sometimes the next best step can be pausing, right? To let the answer come. We are typically a society that wants to ask the question of, what do I need to do next, right? And then we think about the doing. But sometimes the next best step is in the being. It's in the stillness. It's in the breathing, right? It's in the allowing the guidance to come to you, right? And being okay in that liminal space as you wait. And so I love that you said that, because that stillness, right, has been such a pivotal part of my own journey and evolution. That 90-day challenge is what first introduced me to consistent stillness, right? Before that, I would sit still sometimes, and I'm a busy bee. I'm a busy bee.
Right.
And I like to do, right? That's just a part of my makeup. But I have understood that, again, there's space and time for movement, but there's also space and time for stillness. And we have to know when to hold space for both of those. And so I love that you shared that.
Absolutely. And I just thank you. I thank you for saying yes again, and for us having this conversation. And I am so encouraged, and I know that this has been encouraging to each and every one of our listeners. So I just encourage everyone who is listening, everyone who is watching, that this is your season and this is your time to move forward and to soar courageously into new heights, into new perspectives, receiving new expectations, expecting beyond what you have expected, and allow yourself to be released into a new domain, into a new posture, and into a new space of belief, so that what you know is how you walk in your belief, and that you are being, so that when you do, you are doing with intention. This podcast is produced by Ronald S. Rudisil and Iona R. Rudisil. Each episode of this podcast will be posted in video version on our YouTube channel, Iona Speaks About Soaring Courageously. You can connect with me on social media. On Instagram, it's Iona SPKS_Soaring Courageously. And on both LinkedIn and Facebook, it's Iona R. Rudisil. If you like this podcast, tell a friend, tell your family, and please like, rate, review, and subscribe. And most of all, keep soaring courageously.